Welcome to Revenge Kitchen, where we cook up drama, serve betrayal, and garnish it with sweet cold revenge. Let's eat things up.
The pregnancy test sat on our bathroom counter like a loaded weapon. Two pink lines stared back at me, clear as day, while downstairs I could hear Marcus laughing, actually laughing into his phone at nearly midnight. The same phone that had been buzzing with messages from Sophia Work for the past 3 weeks. The same phone he'd started taking into the bathroom with him. The same phone that would destroy everything I thought I knew about the man I'd spent 6 years building a life with. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, because the signs were there long before that pregnancy test forced me to see the truth I'd been desperately avoiding. My name is Alina Markovic, and 3 months ago I thought I had the perfect relationship. I know how that sounds, naive, maybe even stupid in hindsight, but Marcus and I had built something I was proud of. We weren't the couple posting constant selfies or declaring our love every 5 minutes on social media. We were steady, reliable. The kind of partnership where we could sit in comfortable silence over morning coffee, where he knew exactly how I liked my tea, and where I could predict his terrible dad jokes before he even opened his mouth. I teach 7th grade English at Jefferson Middle School, which means my days are filled with adolescent drama, book reports, and the occasional breakthrough moment when a student finally grasps the difference between a metaphor and a simile. It's not glamorous work, but it's mine. I love the smell of fresh notebooks in September, the way kids' faces light up when they connect with a story, and even the chaotic energy of a classroom full of 12-year-olds debating whether Romeo and Juliet is romantic or tragic. Marcus worked as a corporate event planner at Sterling and Associates, one of those sleek marketing agencies downtown with exposed brick walls and kombucha on tap. He coordinated product launches, client galas, and corporate retreats, the kind of events where everything had to be perfect and everyone had to be impressed. He was good at it, too. Marcus could charm a room full of executives, remember everyone's dietary restrictions, and somehow make a Tuesday evening networking mixer feel like the social event of the year. Our apartment reflected both our personalities. My bookshelves lined one wall of the living room, while his collection of vintage concert posters decorated another. The kitchen table, where we ate breakfast together every morning, was scarred from years of my late-night grading sessions, and the couch bore the permanent indent of Marcus's preferred spot during our Sunday movie marathons. It was home in the truest sense, filled with 6 years' worth of shared memories and quiet traditions. The first sign something was wrong came on a Tuesday in early March. I remember because it was the day after our anniversary, 6 years together, which we'd celebrated with dinner at Luigi's, the same Italian place where we'd had our first official date. Marcus had been unusually distracted during dinner, checking his phone more than usual and apologizing each time. "Work emergency," he'd explained, flashing that charming smile that usually made me forget whatever I was annoyed about. "Sophia's handling the Morrison account launch, and she's panicking about the venue setup." Sophia Ramhers. I'd heard the name before. She was one of the junior associates who joined Sterling and Associates about 8 months earlier. Marcus had mentioned her in passing, usually in the context of work projects or team meetings. Young, ambitious, eager to prove herself. The kind of employee Marcus, as a senior planner, was expected to mentor. But that Tuesday morning, Sophia's name came up in a different context. I was getting ready for school, standing at our bathroom mirror applying mascara, when Marcus's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He was in the shower, so I glanced over automatically, one of those unconscious couple habits you develop after years together. The message preview showed on his lock screen, "Sophia Work, thanks for last night. You're amazing at." The preview cut off there, but something about the phrasing made my stomach twist. Not "thanks for your help last night" or "thanks for staying late." Just "thanks for last night." And "you're amazing at" what? Problem solving, event planning, or something else entirely? I shook my head, forcing myself to focus on my reflection. Marcus and I had built our relationship on trust. He'd never given me a reason to doubt him. If Sophia was texting about work, then it was about work. Period. But the seed was planted. Over the next few days, I found myself paying attention to things I'd previously ignored. Marcus had always been social. His job required it, but lately, he seemed to be working later more frequently. Client dinners that ran past 10 p.m., emergency meetings that couldn't wait until morning, weekend calls that sent him pacing around our apartment, speaking in hushed tones about logistics and timeline adjustments. "You're working too much," I told him one evening as he wolfed down leftover pasta at nearly 9:30. "When's the last time we had dinner together?" "I know, babe, I'm sorry." He reached across the table to squeeze my hand, his thumb tracing the familiar pattern across my knuckles. "It's just this busy season. The Morrison launch is in 2 weeks, and then the Hartwell corporate retreat right after. Once we get through April, things will calm down." His explanation made perfect sense. I knew his job had seasonal rushes, but something in his voice, a slight tightness, a barely perceptible shift in tone, made me wonder if he was trying to convince himself as much as me. The second sign came the following weekend. We were having coffee at Brew and Bean, our Saturday morning tradition, when Marcus's phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it, smiled slightly, and started typing a response. "Work?" I asked, though it was barely 8 a.m. on a Saturday. "Yeah, Sophia's having second thoughts about the Morrison venue layout. She's worried the networking space won't flow properly." He was still typing, his thumbs moving quickly across the screen. "I'm just reassuring her that we've got it handled." I watched him type for what felt like a full minute, far longer than any reassuring message about venue logistics should take. When he finally put the phone down, I caught a glimpse of the message thread. Even upside down and at a distance, I could see it was lengthy, a wall of text that suggested this wasn't their first conversation of the morning. "She seems pretty anxious about this project," I observed, keeping my tone neutral. "She is. It's her first major account, and she's putting a lot of pressure on herself." Marcus's response came quickly, almost automatically. "You know how it is when you're trying to prove yourself in a new job." I did know. I remembered my first year teaching, how I'd second-guessed every lesson plan and stayed up late worrying about parent conferences. But I'd turned to my mentor, Mrs. Wu, for guidance, not my boyfriend. There was something about the frequency and intimacy of Sophia's apparent need for reassurance that felt different. But again, I pushed the thought away. Marcus was a good mentor. He cared about his colleagues' success. These were positive qualities, not red flags. The third sign was harder to dismiss. I was grading papers in our living room the following Tuesday when Marcus's phone, charging on the coffee table, lit up with a notification. He was in the kitchen making dinner, humming along to whatever playlist he had going. Without thinking, I glanced at the screen. Instagram notification. "Sophia Ramirez tagged you in a photo." Curiosity won over restraint. I picked up his phone and swiped to see the notification. The photo was from what looked like a work event, sleek urban restaurant, dim lighting, craft cocktails on the table. Sophia was taking a selfie, holding her phone at arm's length to capture both herself and Marcus, who was leaning in close behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder. The caption read, "Late night strategy session with the best mentor ever. #work hustle Team Sterling grateful." I stared at the photo for a long moment, analyzing every detail. Sophia looked radiant. Her dark hair fell in perfect waves, her makeup was flawless despite the late hour, and she was wearing a dress that was definitely not typical office attire. Marcus looked relaxed and genuinely happy, his smile more natural than I'd seen in weeks. But what bothered me most was what I didn't see. No other colleagues in the background, no laptops or work materials visible on the table. No indication that this was anything more than two people having drinks together at what appeared to be a decidedly non-corporate venue. "Dinner's ready," Marcus called from the kitchen. I quickly put his phone back down and gathered my papers, my mind racing. Maybe they'd met other colleagues who had already left. Maybe this was taken at the end of a legitimate work dinner. Maybe I was reading too much into a single photo. But as we ate dinner together, I found myself studying Marcus's face, searching for any sign of guilt or discomfort. He seemed normal, tired from a long day, but engaged in our conversation about my upcoming parent conferences and his weekend plans. If he was hiding something, he was doing it flawlessly. After dinner, as we settled onto the couch for our usual evening TV routine, I decided to test the waters. How was your strategy session with Sophia today? I asked casually, scrolling through Netflix options. Marcus paused, his wine glass halfway to his lips. Strategy session. She tagged you in a photo from tonight. Looked like you two were having a productive meeting. Oh, right. He took a sip of wine, his eyes still on the TV screen. Yeah, we grabbed dinner to go over the Morrison timeline. She had some concerns about the catering coordination. Dinner, not drinks. And he described it as going over timelines, not as a strategy session. Small discrepancies, but they poked at me like thorns. Just the two of you. I kept my tone light, curious rather than accusatory. Everyone else had plans. Marcus selected a documentary about ocean conservation, effectively ending the conversation. This okay with you? I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. Everyone else had plans. Convenient. And since when did venue logistics require dinner meetings that ran late enough for Sophia to be in cocktail attire? That night, lying in bed listening to Marcus's steady breathing, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if I was losing my mind. Was I manufacturing problems where none existed? Marcus had always been social with his colleagues. He'd had work dinners before, though I realized with a start that I couldn't remember the last time he'd mentioned one that didn't include Sophia. I thought about my students, how they could sense tension between their parents even when the adults thought they were hiding it perfectly. Kids were perceptive that way. They picked up on subtle changes in behavior, inconsistencies in stories, the spaces between what people said and what they meant. Maybe adults weren't so different. Maybe I was picking up on something real, something my logical mind was trying to dismiss. The pregnancy test happened 3 weeks later, on a Thursday morning in early April. I'd been feeling off for days, tired, slightly nauseous, unusually emotional. At first, I'd attributed it to stress. Parent conferences were coming up, and I had a particularly challenging class this year. But when I realized my period was late, a different possibility crept in. Marcus had already left for work when I drove to the drugstore. I felt foolish buying the test, like a teenager afraid of getting caught. We talked about kids, of course, vague conversations about someday and when we're ready. But someday had always felt safely in the future, not sitting on our bathroom counter staring me in the face. 2 pink lines. I sat on the edge of our bathtub, the test in my trembling hands, and tried to process what this meant. A baby, Marcus's baby, our baby. 6 months ago, the thought would have filled me with joy. But now, with all these questions swirling around Sophia and late-night work sessions and photos that didn't quite add up, I felt something closer to panic. How do you tell your partner you're pregnant when you're not even sure you trust them anymore? I decided to wait until the weekend to tell Marcus about the pregnancy. I needed time to process it myself, to figure out how to bring it up without letting my recent doubts color the conversation. This should be a moment of celebration, not suspicion. But Friday night changed everything. Marcus came home around 7, which was actually early for him lately. He seemed upbeat, almost giddy, as he kissed me hello and opened a bottle of wine. Good day, I asked, watching him pour 2 glasses. Great day, the Morrison launch went perfectly. Sophia really knocked it out of the park. He handed me a glass, and I had to resist the urge to tell him I couldn't drink it. She's got real talent. I think she's going places. Sophia again, always Sophia. We ordered Thai food and settled in for a quiet evening, but Marcus seemed distracted. His phone kept buzzing, and each time, he'd glance at it with a small smile before setting it aside. Popular tonight, I commented after the 5th or 6th buzz. Work group chat, everyone's celebrating the Morrison success. He squeezed my shoulder. Sorry, I'll put it on silent. But when he reached for his phone, a message notification popped up that made my blood freeze. Sophia, work, I can't stop thinking about what you said earlier. You're right, we deserve to be happy. Can't wait for this weekend. The message disappeared quickly as Marcus swiped it away, but I'd seen every word. We deserve to be happy, this weekend. A heart emoji. My Thai food suddenly tasted like cardboard. I set down my chopsticks, my hands shaking slightly. Everything okay? Marcus asked, his attention finally fully on me. Fine, just tired. I forced a smile. Think I'll go to bed early. I'll be up in a bit, just need to respond to a few more messages. I went through the motions of getting ready for bed, but my mind was racing. We deserved to be happy. That wasn't work talk. That was relationship talk. Intimate talk. The kind of thing you say to someone you're involved with, not someone you're mentoring. From the bedroom, I could hear Marcus moving around downstairs, his voice low as he made what sounded like a phone call. I crept to the top of the stairs, straining to listen. "Can't wait either," he was saying. "Saturday afternoon works perfectly. Alina has that thing with her brother." I did have plans with Daniel on Saturday. We were supposed to help him move some furniture. Marcus had begged off, claiming he had work to catch up on. "No, I know, we have to be careful." His voice dropped even lower, and I couldn't make out the rest. I crawled back into bed, pulling the covers over my head like a child hiding from monsters. But the monsters were real, and they were living in my house, sleeping in my bed, and apparently making weekend plans with junior marketing associates named Sophia. Saturday morning, I went through the motions of normalcy. Marcus made coffee and toast, chatting about the errands he needed to run while I was with Daniel. He was being extra attentive, asking about my plans, complimenting my outfit, suggesting we have dinner at that new bistro I'd mentioned wanting to try. The guilt performance, I realized later. He was being sweet because he knew he was about to betray me. Daniel picked me up at 10, and we spent the morning rearranging his living room and assembling a bookshelf that came with incomprehensible instructions. It felt good to focus on something concrete and solvable, to hammer actual nails instead of just hammering away at my own doubts. "You seem off today," Daniel observed as we took a break for lunch. "Everything okay?" My brother had always been perceptive. 4 years younger than me, but he'd inherited our mother's ability to read people's emotions like weather patterns. I considered telling him about my suspicions, but they still felt too nebulous, too much like paranoia. "Just work stress," I lied. "Parent conferences next week." Well, he gave me a look that suggested he wasn't buying it. "How's Marcus?" "Fine, good. Working a lot, but that's normal for this time of year." Daniel nodded, but something in his expression made me think he wanted to say more. Instead, he changed the subject to his latest freelance project, a website redesign for a local brewery. We finished the bookshelf by mid-afternoon, and Daniel drove me home. As we pulled into our driveway, I noticed Marcus's car wasn't there. "Thought he was working from home today," Daniel commented. "Must have gone into the office." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. The Sterling and Associates building was downtown, a 40-minute drive. If Marcus had needed to go in, he would have mentioned it, probably complained about having to give up his Saturday. "Want me to wait until he gets back?" Daniel offered. "We could grab dinner, catch up properly." "No, I'm fine. Thanks for today." I hugged him goodbye, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne and wishing I could somehow transport us both back to childhood, when the biggest betrayal was someone eating the last cookie without sharing. Inside the empty apartment, I stood in our living room and tried to decide what to do. I could call Marcus, ask where he was. I could clean the house, grade papers, start dinner. I could pretend everything was normal and wait for him to come home with whatever excuse he'd prepared. Or I could stop being a passive observer in my own life and find out the truth. Marcus's laptop was on the dining room table, closed but not locked away. He'd never been secretive about his technology before. We'd always been the kind of couple who used each other's phones without asking, who knew each other's passwords and had nothing to hide. When had that changed? I opened the laptop, my heart pounding. It required a password, but I knew it would be some variation of his usual combinations. I tried his birthday plus our anniversary year. Nothing. His childhood dog's name plus his favorite number. Nothing. Then I tried Sophia's name plus the year. She'd started at Sterling and Associates. The desktop loaded. I stared at the screen, feeling sick. When had he changed his password to include her name, and why? I opened his email, though I wasn't sure what I was looking for. His work inbox was full of the usual corporate communications, meeting invites, project updates, vendor quotes. But there was a folder I didn't recognize: personal projects. Inside were dozens of emails between Marcus and Sophia, dating back to February. At first, they looked professional discussions about client preferences, venue bookings, timeline adjustments. But as I scrolled through them chronologically, the tone shifted. March 15th. Thanks for staying late to help with the Morrison materials. You're incredibly dedicated. March 18th. I keep thinking about our conversation yesterday. You're right that we work really well together. March 25th. Can't concentrate in meetings knowing you're sitting right there. This is getting complicated. April 2nd. I know this is risky, but I can't stop thinking about you. We need to talk about this. April 8th. Last night was incredible. I've never felt this way about a colleague before. April 12th. I hate that we have to be so careful. You deserve so much more than stolen moments. I read through message after message, watching my 6-year relationship dissolve in real time. They'd been careful, never explicit about physical details, but the emotional affair was undeniable. And based on the timeline, it had become physical sometime in early April. Right around the time I'd gotten pregnant. I closed the laptop and walked to the bathroom, staring at myself in the mirror. The pregnancy test was still in the drawer where I'd hidden it, waiting for the right moment to share the news with Marcus. Now I wondered if there would ever be a right moment, or if he'd even want to know. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hi Alina, this is Priya Kapoor from Sterling & Associates. I work in IT. I think we need to talk. Can you meet me at Brew and Bean in an hour? Priya, I remembered Marcus mentioning her. She'd helped set up their new project management system. But why was she texting me? I arrived at Brew and Bean 20 minutes early, too anxious to wait at home. Priya was already there, a petite woman in her late 30s with kind eyes and worry lines around her mouth. She waved me over to a corner table, away from the Saturday afternoon crowd. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. I wasn't sure if I should reach out, but Daniel said you seemed upset lately, and after what I discovered yesterday. Daniel, how do you know my brother? We went to college together. He designed the logo for my consulting business last year. Priya wrapped her hands around her coffee mug. He mentioned you taught at Jefferson, and when I realized you were Marcus Ellis's girlfriend, I knew I had to say something. My stomach dropped. What did you discover? Priya pulled out her phone and showed me a screenshot. It was from the Sterling & Associates shared calendar system, showing an entry for yesterday afternoon. Client site visit, M. Ellis, S. Ramirez Grandview Hotel 2, 00-6, 00 p.m. There was no client meeting yesterday, Priya said quietly. I manage the calendar system, and I cross-reference all entries with our client database for billing purposes. The Grandview Hotel isn't a client. There was no site visit scheduled. She swiped to another screenshot. And this is from 2 weeks ago. Same thing, client dinner, with just Marcus and Sophia at a restaurant that's not connected to any of our accounts. My hands were shaking as I stared at the evidence. How long has this been going on? Based on the calendar entries, about 6 weeks, but Alina, Priya's voice was gentle. There's more. She showed me another screenshot, this one from the company's expense reporting system. Hotel charges, restaurant bills, even what looked like a shopping trip to a jewelry store, all coded as client entertainment, all for activities involving just Marcus and Sophia. I have to report this to HR, Priya said. He's been falsifying expense reports, and as his direct supervisor, he's put Sophia in an incredibly vulnerable position. But I wanted to tell you first because... She trailed off, looking uncomfortable. Because I deserve to know my boyfriend is cheating on me and stealing from his company to do it. I'm so sorry, Alina. I thanked Priya and drove home in a daze. Marcus's car was in the driveway now, and I could hear music playing inside. I sat in my car for a long moment, holding my phone, staring at Daniel's contact information. I needed to call someone, but what would I say? That my 6-year relationship was built on lies? That I was pregnant by a man who was embezzling money to fund his affair? Instead, I walked into our apartment and found Marcus in the kitchen, cooking what looked like an elaborate dinner. He was humming, moving around the space with the easy confidence of someone who didn't have a care in the world. Hey babe, how was furniture moving? He kissed my cheek, and I had to resist the urge to pull away. I thought we could try that wine you bought last week with dinner. Where were you today? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Office, had to catch up on some Morrison follow-up paperwork. The lie came so easily, so smoothly, that I wondered how many others I'd missed. Priya Kapoor says there was no client meeting at the Grandview Hotel yesterday. Marcus went very still, his back to me as he stirred something on the stove. When he turned around, his expression was carefully controlled. What did you say? I know about Sophia, Marcus. I know about the hotel, the fake client meetings, the expense reports. I know everything. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Marcus set down his spoon and walked toward me, his hands raised in a placating gesture. Elena, let me explain. It's not what you think. What is it then? Sophia has been going through a really hard time. Her rent got raised and she's been struggling financially. I've been helping her out as a friend. The hotel thing, we were looking at venues for the Hartwell retreat, and I didn't want her to have to pay for parking downtown, so I booked us a room to work from. It's completely innocent. I stared at him, amazed by his ability to lie so convincingly. And the jewelry store. What jewelry store? The one on your expense report from last Tuesday. Marcus's face went through several expressions: surprise, confusion, calculation. I think there might be some kind of mistake in the expense system. I'll have to check with Priya about that. She's the one who showed me, Marcus. She's reporting you to HR on Monday. Elena, you have to believe me. There's nothing going on between Sophia and me. She's a colleague, nothing more. If there are discrepancies in the expense reports, it's a technical error, not fraud. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos Priya had sent me, screenshots of the hotel bookings, the restaurant charges, the timeline of fake meetings. Explain these. Marcus looked at the photos, and I watched his face change as he realized how much evidence there was. The charming mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something calculating and cold underneath. Where did you get these? Does it matter? Elena, whoever gave you these has violated company privacy policies. They could be fired for accessing confidential information without authorization. So could you, for falsifying reports and having an affair with your subordinate. I am not having an affair. His voice rose, and for the first time in our relationship, I felt afraid of him. Sophia is a colleague and a friend. If I've been helping her out financially, it's because I'm a good person who cares about my team. By booking hotel rooms and taking her to jewelry stores. I don't know what you think you saw, but you're wrong. You're letting someone else poison your mind against me, and it's going to destroy our relationship. The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced, that I almost found myself doubting what I'd seen with my own eyes. Almost. I saw your emails, Marcus. That stopped him cold. What? I read your emails to Sophia. Last night was incredible. I've never felt this way about a colleague. You deserve so much more than stolen moments. Should I go on? Marcus sank into a chair at our kitchen table, his head in his hands. For a long moment, the only sound was the timer on the oven, counting down to when our dinner would be ready. How long? I asked. Elena, how long have you been sleeping with her? It's complicated. How's long? Physically, about 3 weeks, but we've had feelings for each other longer than that. 3 weeks, right around the time I'd gotten pregnant. The timing was so cruel it felt almost intentional. Are you in love with her? Marcus looked up at me, and for the first time in months, his expression was completely honest. I don't know, maybe, yes. The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the back of a chair to keep myself steady. What about us? What about the 6 years we've built together? I never meant for this to happen, Elena. I love you, I do. But Sophia and I have this connection, this energy that I've never experienced before. She makes me feel alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. So I make you feel dead. No, that's not what I meant. You make me feel safe, comfortable, but sometimes comfort isn't enough. I thought about the pregnancy test upstairs, about the future I'd been imagining just hours earlier. What does that mean for us? I don't know. I need time to figure things out. Time to choose between us. Elena, it's not that simple. It is that simple, Marcus. You're either committed to this relationship or you're not. You either want to be with me or you want to be with her. There's no middle ground here. I can't just turn off my feelings for Sophia. But you can turn off your commitment to me. Marcus stood up and started pacing around the kitchen. You're making this about choosing sides, but it doesn't have to be that way. Sophia and I work together. We have to maintain a professional relationship regardless of what happens between us personally. And you and I have history, a life together. Can't we find a way to work through this? Work through what? Your affair, your embezzlement, you're lying to me for months. The expense thing is a misunderstanding that I can clear up. And the relationship with Sophia, it doesn't have to end our relationship. Lots of couples work through infidelity. I stared at him, horrified. Are you suggesting we stay together while you continue sleeping with her? I'm suggesting we find a solution that works for everyone. Sophia doesn't want to hurt you any more than I do. She feels terrible about this whole situation. Oh, she feels terrible. How thoughtful of her. Elena, don't be cruel. She's not the villain here. Neither of you are villains. You've been lying to me, stealing from your company, and having an affair with your subordinate, but nobody's the villain. It's more complicated than that, and you know it. It's really not, Marcus. You made a choice. Multiple choices. Every time you booked a hotel room, every time you lied about working late, every time you looked me in the eye and pretended everything was normal, you chose her over me. That's not fair. What's not fair is finding out the person you love has been living a double life for months. What's not fair is having to hear it from a stranger because your boyfriend is too much of a coward to tell you himself. Marcus stopped pacing and turned to face me fully. So what do you want me to do? End things with Sophia and pretend this never happened. Go back to our comfortable little life and act like I'm satisfied with mediocrity. The word hit me like a slap. Mediocrity. Is that what our 6 years together had been to him? Is that how you see me? As mediocre? No, Elena, I see you as safe, predictable, comfortable, and sometimes I need more than that. Then you should have talked to me about it, instead of running off with the first junior associate who batted her eyelashes at you. Sophia didn't bat her eyelashes at me. What we have is real. It's not some cliché office fling. What you have is a power imbalance and a boss who's willing to abuse his position to get laid. That's not what this is. Then what is it, Marcus? Explain to me how sleeping with your subordinate while lying to your girlfriend and stealing from your employer is some grand romantic gesture. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, his jaw clenched with frustration. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold. You know what, Elena? Maybe this is why we ended up here. You reduce everything to black and white. You can't see the complexity of human emotions, the gray areas where real life happens. Everything has to fit into your neat little categories of right and wrong. Some things are black and white, Marcus. Cheating is wrong, lying is wrong, stealing is wrong. Those aren't gray areas. And that rigid thinking is exactly why I felt trapped in this relationship. I couldn't talk to you about feeling unfulfilled because you'd immediately start planning how to fix it, how to optimize our connection like one of your lesson plans. You can't just let people be complicated and messy and human.
Halfway through and the plot's already thick. Keep it boiling, like and subscribe. And let the kitchen keep cooking.
I felt tears starting to form, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. So this is my fault. I drove you into her bed because I'm too rigid. I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying we both contributed to the problems in our relationship, and pretending I'm the only one to blame isn't going to help us move forward. Move forward? There is no moving forward, Marcus. This relationship is over. Elena, don't make any decisions while you're emotional. Let's both take some time to cool down and think about this rationally. I am thinking rationally. You've been cheating on me for months, lying to my face, and embezzling money from your company. Those are facts, not emotions. And the rational response is to end this relationship before you do any more damage. What about everything we've built together? What about our plans? I thought about the pregnancy test upstairs, about the conversation we'd never get to have now. What plans, Marcus? You mean the ones you made without consulting me? The ones where you get to keep both the comfortable girlfriend and the exciting mistress? That's not what I want. Then what do you want? Marcus ran his hands through his hair, looking genuinely distressed for the first time since I'd confronted him. I want to not have to choose. I want to find a way for everyone to be happy. That's not how relationships work. That's not how life works. Maybe it could be. Maybe we're too narrow in how we think about commitment and love. I stared at him, realizing that I was looking at a stranger. The man I'd fallen in love with 6 years ago wouldn't have suggested that betrayal was just a different way of loving. He wouldn't have tried to convince me that his affair was actually a progressive approach to relationships. I need you to leave, I said quietly. Elena, I need you to pack a bag and leave tonight. We can figure out the apartment and our stuff later, but I can't have you here right now. Where am I supposed to go? I'm sure Sophia has room. Marcus flinched. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Marcus, but it's reality. And the reality is that you chose her, so go be with her. He stood there for another moment, maybe waiting for me to change my mind or break down crying. When I did neither, he walked upstairs to pack. I sat at our kitchen table, listening to him move around our bedroom, opening drawers and closet doors. The timer on the oven went off, but I didn't move to check on dinner. The smell of whatever elaborate meal he'd been preparing filled the apartment, a grotesque reminder of how normal this evening was supposed to be. 20 minutes later, Marcus came downstairs with a duffel bag and his laptop case. He set them by the door and walked back to where I was still sitting. Elena, I know you're hurt, but I hope someday you'll understand that this doesn't mean I don't love you. I looked up at him. If this is how you love people, then I don't want your love. He nodded slowly, picked up his bags and left. The silence after Marcus left was deafening. I sat at our kitchen table, my kitchen table now, listening to the apartment settle around me. The oven timer had stopped beeping, but the smell of burned food lingered in the air like a metaphor for everything that had gone wrong. I should have felt relief. The confrontation was over, the truth was out, and I no longer had to live with the gnawing suspicion that something was wrong. But instead, I felt hollow, like someone had reached inside my chest and scooped out everything vital. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. How'd the rest of furniture day go? Want to grab dinner? I stared at the message, trying to figure out how to explain that my entire life had imploded in the span of 3 hours. Instead, I typed back, rain check, long day. But Daniel knew me too well. 20 minutes later, he was knocking on my door with takeout bags and a bottle of wine. You look terrible, he said by way of greeting, pushing past me into the apartment. Where's Marcus? Gone. Gone where? I told him everything. The pregnancy test, Priya's evidence, the confrontation, Marcus's suggestion that we could all somehow coexist in his twisted version of happiness. Daniel listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. That manipulative piece of, he caught himself, probably remembering that despite everything, I might still have feelings to protect. I'm sorry, Elena, I should have said something sooner. Said something about what? I saw them together 3 weeks ago, Sophia and Marcus, at that new wine bar on 5th Street. Daniel set down his beer and leaned forward. They were holding hands, Elena, and when I walked by their table, they both looked guilty as hell. Why didn't you tell me? Because I hoped I was wrong, because I didn't want to be the brother who destroyed his sister's relationship over a misunderstanding. He shook his head. I should have trusted my instincts. It wouldn't have changed anything. I would have made excuses for him, convinced myself there was an innocent explanation. I needed to see the evidence myself. We ate Chinese takeout and drank wine while I told him about the pregnancy test still hidden in my bathroom drawer. Daniel was quiet for a long time after that revelation. What are you going to do? He finally asked. I don't know. I can't even think about that decision while everything else is so raw. You know I'll support whatever you choose, right? And Mom and Dad will too. I nodded, feeling tears threaten for the first time since Marcus had left. I just feel so stupid. 6 years, Daniel. How did I not see it? Because you trusted him, because he was careful and manipulative and good at lying. None of this is your fault. He said I was too rigid, too black and white, that I couldn't handle the complexity of human emotions. That's gaslighting bullshit, and you know it. There's nothing complex about cheating and lying. He's just trying to make you feel responsible for his choices." I knew Daniel was right, but Marcus's words had still hit their mark. Was I too inflexible? Too quick to see things in terms of right and wrong? Had my approach to our relationship somehow driven him away? "I keep thinking about all the signs I missed," I admitted. "The late nights, the phone calls, the way he started password protecting everything. I should have confronted him weeks ago." "You couldn't have known, and confronting him earlier wouldn't have changed who he is or what he was doing." That night, after Daniel left, I finally allowed myself to cry. I sat on my bathroom floor, holding the pregnancy test, and sobbed for everything I'd lost, not just Marcus, but the future I'd imagined, the family we'd talked about building, the sense of security that comes from believing your partner is trustworthy. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Mrs. Wu, my former principal and current mentor, stood at my door with coffee and pastries from the bakery downtown. "Daniel called me," she said by way of explanation. "He thought you might need some company." Mrs. Wu had been a constant in my life for over a decade, first as my boss, then as a friend and advisor. She'd navigated her own share of personal challenges, including a messy divorce from her first husband when she was in her 40s. If anyone could offer perspective on relationship betrayal, it was her. We sat in my living room, morning sunlight streaming through windows that suddenly felt too bright, too cheerful for my current mood. "Tell me about this young man," Mrs. Wu said after I'd given her the abbreviated version of yesterday's events. "Marcus, what do you want to know? What attracted you to him initially?" I thought back to our first meeting at a mutual friend's party 6 years earlier. He was charming, confident. He had this way of making everyone in the room feel like they were the most important person there, and he seemed genuinely interested in my work, in what I cared about. And how did that change over time? I guess I became just one person in the room instead of the most important one. His attention got spread thinner as his career took off. But I thought that was normal, the way relationships settle into routine. Mrs. Wu nodded thoughtfully. "What about when you were upset or worried about something? How did he respond?" The question made me uncomfortable because I realized I couldn't remember many instances of being upset or worried around Marcus. Not because I was always happy, but because I'd learned not to bring my problems to him. "I usually talk to Daniel or to you about work stuff," I admitted. "Marcus was dealing with his own stress, and I didn't want to pile on." "So you managed your emotions to protect his comfort." When she put it that way, it sounded pathological. I guess I did. "Elena, healthy relationships are built on mutual support. If you felt you couldn't turn to your partner when you were struggling, that's a significant problem, one that has nothing to do with being too rigid or black and white." Over the next hour, Mrs. Wu helped me see patterns I'd been blind to for years. How Marcus had gradually trained me to be less demanding, less emotionally present, less complicated. How I'd shrunk myself to fit the shape of what he wanted in a partner, convincing myself that this was maturity and compromise. "The affair wasn't about Sophia being more exciting than you," Mrs. Wu said as she prepared to leave. "It was about Marcus wanting a relationship where he could be the center of attention again, where someone looked at him with fresh eyes and made him feel important. That's not sustainable, Elena. Eventually, Sophia will become routine too, and he'll need someone new to provide that validation." After Mrs. Wu left, I spent the day cleaning the apartment with an intensity that bordered on manic. I stripped the bed and washed all the sheets. I went through drawers and closets, removing traces of Marcus's presence. I reorganized my bookshelves and rearranged the furniture, trying to reclaim the space as mine alone. That evening, Priya called to check on me and update me on the workplace situation. "I submitted my report to HR this morning," she said. "They're conducting a full audit of Marcus's expense reports going back 6 months. It looks like the financial discrepancies are significant, probably enough for criminal charges if the company decides to pursue them." "What about Sophia?" "She's cooperating fully with the investigation. It turns out she had no idea Marcus was falsifying the expense reports. She thought all their meetings and hotel stays were legitimately work-related." I felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment. Relief that Sophia wasn't a knowing accomplice in the financial fraud, but disappointment that it didn't make her affair with Marcus any less real. Will she face any consequences? Probably not criminal ones, but HR is likely to reassign one of them to a different department. The power dynamic makes the relationship inappropriate regardless of how it started. After I hung up with Priya, I made myself dinner, just a simple pasta dish, nothing elaborate. As I ate, I realized it was the first meal I'd truly tasted in weeks. My appetite had been off for so long that I'd attributed it to pregnancy symptoms, but now I wondered how much of it had been stress from suppressing my own intuition. The next few days established a new routine. I went to work, where focusing on my students provided welcome distraction from my personal chaos. I came home to an apartment that felt both too empty and too full of memories. I called my parents and told them Marcus and I had broken up, without going into details about why. I scheduled a doctor's appointment to discuss my pregnancy options. But the most important conversation happened on Thursday evening, when Marcus called. "Elena, I've been thinking about everything you said, and I want to apologize." I'd been expecting this call, the attempt to reconcile now that the excitement of the affair was being tempered by real-world consequences. "Okay," I said neutrally. "I handled this whole situation badly. I should have been honest with you from the beginning about my feelings for Sophia, and I definitely shouldn't have let the financial stuff get so complicated." The financial stuff, he was still minimizing the embezzlement. "I want to try to work this out, Elena. We have too much history to throw it all away over one mistake." One mistake, Marcus, this was months of deliberate deception. I know it seems that way, but it really did start innocently. Sophia was having a hard time, and I was just trying to help a colleague. The feelings developed gradually, and by the time I realized what was happening, I didn't know how to stop it without hurting everyone involved. "So your solution was to keep lying." "I was trying to figure out how to handle it without destroying our relationship. I love you, Elena. What Sophia and I have is intense, but it's also new and uncertain. What you and I have is solid, built on years of real partnership." I listened to him talk, recognizing the manipulation tactics Mrs. Wu had helped me identify. The minimizing language, the false equivalencies, the attempt to make me feel responsible for solving his emotional confusion. "Marcus, do you understand why I can't trust you anymore? I understand you're hurt, and I take full responsibility for that, but trust can be rebuilt. Couples work through infidelity all the time. It's not just the affair. It's the lying, the gaslighting, the financial fraud. It's the way you tried to convince me that I was crazy for noticing things were wrong. You didn't just cheat on me, you tried to make me doubt my own perceptions. I never meant to make you feel crazy. But you did. For months, I felt like I was losing my mind, seeing problems that you insisted didn't exist. Elena, I was trying to protect you from getting hurt unnecessarily. By lying to me. By handling the situation discreetly until I could figure out what I really wanted. And there it was, the fundamental selfishness that had driven all his choices. He'd wanted to explore his feelings for Sophia without giving up the security of our relationship. He'd wanted to have his cake and eat it too, consequences be damned. "What you really wanted," I repeated. "Not what was best for our relationship, or what was honest, or what was fair to me, just what you wanted." "That's not fair, Elena." "It's accurate, Marcus. Every choice you made over the past few months was about what you wanted in the moment, without regard for how it would affect me or our relationship. I was trying to find a solution that would make everyone happy. By keeping me in the dark and lying to my face." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted from apologetic to frustrated. "Look, I called to try to fix this, but if you're determined to be the victim, then maybe we really are incompatible." And there was the real Marcus, the one who emerged when his charm didn't work. The one who would rather blame me for being hurt than take responsibility for hurting me. "You're wrong about one thing," I said. "I'm not the victim anymore. I was the victim when I was living a lie without knowing it. Now I'm just someone who knows the truth and is making decisions based on that truth." "What does that mean?" "It means this conversation is over, Marcus, and so are we." I hung up before he could respond and immediately blocked his number. Then I sat in my quiet apartment and felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. The pregnancy decision came 2 weeks later, after long conversations with my doctor, my family, and several sleepless nights of soul-searching. In the end, I realized that bringing a child into the world while I was still rebuilding my own life wasn't fair to anyone. The decision wasn't easy, but it was mine to make, based on what I knew to be best for my circumstances. Daniel drove me to the appointment and stayed with me afterward, making terrible jokes and bringing me ice cream, and generally being the kind of supportive presence I'd been missing in my romantic relationship. "Do you regret it?" he asked as we sat on my couch that evening, watching mindless TV. "The procedure? No, I know it was the right choice for where I am right now." "What about Marcus? Do you regret the relationship?" I thought about it seriously. I regret how it ended. I regret not trusting my instincts sooner, but I don't regret the relationship itself. It taught me a lot about what I want and what I won't accept. Such as, I want a partner who sees me as essential, not just comfortable. Someone who comes to me when they're struggling instead of shutting me out. Someone who's honest even when the truth is complicated. That sounds reasonable. And I won't accept being treated like an option while someone else explores other possibilities. I won't accept being lied to or manipulated or made to feel crazy for noticing when something's wrong. 3 months later, I ran into Sophia at the grocery store. She looked thinner than I remembered, stressed in a way that suggested the affair hadn't led to the happiness she'd expected. "Elena," she said, clearly uncomfortable, "how are you?" "I'm well, how are you?" I'm really sorry about everything that happened. I never meant for it to go as far as it did." I studied her face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. Instead, I saw someone who looked genuinely remorseful and possibly as hurt as I had been. "How are things with Marcus?" I asked. Sophia's expression crumpled slightly. "We broke up last month. It turns out he'd been seeing someone else, another colleague, while we were together. I guess I should have seen it coming." I felt a flash of vindication, followed immediately by sympathy. Marcus hadn't changed. He just found a new target for his attention-seeking behavior. "I'm sorry," I said and meant it. "You warned me, in a way, when you said he'd chosen me over you. I thought that meant he was committed to me, but really it just meant he was willing to betray anyone when it suited him." We talked for a few more minutes, two women who'd learned the same lesson about the same man in different ways. When we parted, I felt closure I hadn't expected to find. That evening, I called Mrs. Wu to tell her about the encounter. "How do you feel about it?" she asked. Satisfied, I guess, not because Sophia got hurt, but because it confirmed what I'd learned about Marcus. He's not capable of the kind of commitment I want in a relationship. And what kind of commitment is that? The kind where someone chooses you every day, not just when it's convenient or exciting. The kind where honesty is more important than comfort. That sounds like wisdom, Elena. 6 months after Marcus left, I started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just coffee dates and casual dinners with men Daniel knew or colleagues from other schools. I wasn't looking for anything intense or dramatic. I wanted ordinary, honest, reliable. I found it with Tom Chen, a librarian at the community college who read voraciously, made terrible puns, and never once made me feel like I was too much or too little. Our first real conversation lasted 4 hours, covering everything from favorite books to childhood fears to political opinions. When he walked me to my car that night, he asked if he could see me again, and I said yes without hesitation. "You seem different," Daniel observed after I'd been seeing Tom for a month. "More relaxed." "I feel like myself again," I said. "Like I can be completely honest about what I think and feel without worrying about managing someone else's reaction." That's what healthy relationships are supposed to feel like. Tom and I took things slowly, building trust through consistent small actions rather than grand gestures. He called when he said he would. He showed up on time. He remembered details about my work and asked follow-up questions about my students. When I told him about Marcus and the affair, he listened without trying to fix anything or offer solutions, just held my hand and let me know he understood why it had been so painful. A year later, I was working in my community garden plot, the space I'd started renting after Marcus left, where I grew tomatoes and herbs and flowers that served no purpose except to be beautiful. Tom was helping me plant bulbs for next spring when my phone rang. It was Priya. I thought you'd want to know, Marcus was arrested yesterday. The DA decided to press charges for the embezzlement. Turns out the financial discrepancies were even bigger than we initially thought. I thanked Priya for the update and hung up. Tom looked at me questioningly. Marcus is facing criminal charges for stealing from his company, I explained. How do you feel about that? I considered the question, searching for vindictiveness or satisfaction or grief. Instead, I felt mostly indifferent. I feel like it's justice, I said finally. Not revenge, just natural consequences for his choices. Are you okay? I'm fine. Actually, I'm better than fine. That evening, as Tom and I cooked dinner together in my kitchen, our kitchen really, since he'd moved in 3 months earlier, I reflected on how completely my life had changed. The apartment looked different, felt different, with Tom's books mixed in with mine and his terrible art covering the walls. But more than that, I felt different. Stronger. More certain of my own worth and what I deserved in a relationship. I have something to tell you, Tom said as we sat down to eat. My heart skipped, old anxiety patterns kicking in despite everything I'd learned. I got the job, he continued, grinning. The head librarian position at the university. They called this afternoon. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by genuine excitement. Tom, that's amazing. When do you start? January, which means we'll need to figure out logistics, since the university is 40 minutes away. We'll figure it out, I said, and meant it. Unlike my relationship with Marcus, this one was built on the assumption that we were a team, that we'd solve problems together rather than hiding them from each other. Later that night, lying in bed next to Tom while he read a mystery novel and I graded papers, I thought about the woman I'd been 2 years earlier. She would have been terrified by the idea of her partner changing jobs, worried about how it would affect their relationship, anxious about having conversations about logistics and compromise. She would have internalized the stress and tried to solve everything herself rather than trusting that they could work through challenges together. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Tom, I said, setting aside my red pen. He looked up from his book, giving me his full attention in that way that still made my heart flutter. I'm proud of you, and I'm excited to see what comes next for us. He smiled and leaned over to kiss my forehead, even if it means a longer commute and scheduled juggling. Even then, we're a team. We'll figure it out. As I turned off the bedside lamp and settled into sleep, I realized that this was what I'd been searching for all along without knowing it. Not perfection, not the absence of challenges, but the presence of someone who faced life with me rather than in spite of me. Someone who chose honesty over comfort, partnership over convenience, and me over anyone else, every single day. The last thing I thought about before drifting off was the pregnancy test I'd thrown away over a year ago, and how different that decision felt now. Not tragic or traumatic, but simply one choice among many that had led me to this moment, this bed, this man who loved me enough to let me be completely myself. If someone had told me 3 years ago that discovering my boyfriend's affair would be the best thing that ever happened to me, I would have thought they were insane. But as I write this, sitting in the garden I've cultivated behind the house Tom and I bought together last spring, I can honestly say it was. Not because betrayal is good, or because pain leads to growth. Those are oversimplifications that minimize real suffering. But because living through Marcus's deception taught me things about myself and relationships that I never could have learned any other way. I learned that trust isn't just about believing your partner won't cheat. It's about believing they'll be honest with you when they're struggling, that they'll come to you with problems instead of hiding them, that they'll prioritize your shared life over their individual impulses. I learned that love isn't enough if it's not accompanied by respect, commitment, and basic human decency. Marcus claimed to love me even while he was betraying me, and he may have been telling the truth as he understood it, but love without integrity is just sentiment. I learned that my instincts are trustworthy, especially when others try to convince me they're wrong. The signs were there from the beginning. My gut knew something was off long before my brain was willing to accept it. Now I listen to that inner voice instead of dismissing it as paranoia or insecurity. Most importantly, I learned that I deserve a partner who sees me as essential, not optional. Someone who chooses me not because I'm convenient or comfortable, but because they genuinely cannot imagine their life without me in it. Tom and I got engaged last month in the community garden where I first started rebuilding my life after Marcus. It wasn't a grand gesture, just the two of us working side by side, planting bulbs for next spring, when he said, "I want to do this with you for the rest of my life." All of it. The boring parts and the beautiful parts and everything in between. I said yes before he even pulled out the ring. We're planning a small wedding for next fall, nothing elaborate or Instagram-worthy. Just our families and closest friends, good food, and promises we actually intend to keep. Mrs. Wu will officiate. She got ordained online specifically for our ceremony, which feels perfect given how much she helped me understand what healthy love looks like. Daniel is Tom's best man, which still makes me laugh because he spent the first 6 months of our relationship interrogating poor Tom about his intentions and his relationship history. But he's the one who taught me that I deserved better than Marcus's version of love, so it seems fitting that he'll be standing up there when I marry someone who actually meets that standard. Sometimes people ask me if I'm bitter about the years I wasted with Marcus, and the question always puzzles me. Those weren't wasted years. They were learning years. They taught me what I didn't want, which is just as valuable as knowing what I do want. I don't wish Marcus ill. I hope he gets the help he needs to understand why he makes the choices he does, why he needs constant external validation, why he's willing to hurt people who love him in pursuit of that validation. But I also hope he does that work far away from me and anyone else who might become collateral damage in his personal growth journey. Sophia and I run into each other occasionally around town. She's dating a guy from her yoga class now, someone who seems genuinely kind and appropriately smitten with her. The last time we talked, she thanked me for not hating her, for understanding that she'd been manipulated too. I told her what Mrs. Wu told me, that Marcus was an expert at finding people's vulnerabilities and exploiting them. Sophia's vulnerability was financial insecurity and career ambition.
That was one cold dish. Was it served right? Let us know in the comments. Hit like, subscribe for more powerful stories, and share this with someone who will feel it.